Good evening and welcome to Theater for Ideas. Tonight, a very special program, and justice for all with a big question mark. I'm Terry Doran. I'm pleased to introduce our guests all the way from Washington, D.C., Yvonne Bushyhead. Yvonne and I have talked many times on the phone, exchanged letters. First time I've had the privilege of meeting you. Very glad you're here. Our other guest will not be here in person. He's Mr. Leonard Peltier. Mr. Peltier is in federal penitentiary in Leavenworth, Kansas. He is there for the murder of 2 FBI agents, June 26, 1975. He is widely believed to have been framed by the United States government. That's what we'll be talking about tonight. Yvonne Bushyhead is studying for a law degree in Washington. She is a member of Leonard's Defense Committee. She'll be telling you more about this case, why it's important to each and every one of us, why it's widely believed that Mr. Peltier has been framed, and some of the circumstances surrounding the event of that day. So Yvonne, I want to welcome you to Theater for Ideas. Did you have a good trip?
Yes, real good.
Great, great. We'll wait for Leonard to call. Leonard did call about an hour ago, by the way, so we'll hope he gets to call again. Tell us a little bit about that day and the events and how you became involved and why it is important to all of us.
There's some history behind that day. 2 years before that shootout, there was what's more commonly and probably widely known as the Wounded Knee massacre problem. Between 73 and 75, about 354 Native Americans were killed. Most of them were AIM members, American Indian Movement members, and they had been summoned to Pine Ridge to help bring peace and bring a way of life and some control to people's lives. The AIM members were people who were organized because our government doesn't like our ideology. Ever since there's been contact with the dominant society, we've had a difference in our ideology, our belief system, our tradition, our way of life is different, and that threatens some people, the power people in this country. Therefore, sometimes our various tribes have special problems. At present, all of the northern tribes along the northern border are having a particular problem as we speak. I don't know if you've heard of the Wisconsin Indian people have just been offered $36 million to buy their treaty rights. They've turned it down, but you know, we've done this so many times before, our Indian tribes have. Anyway, getting back to Pine Ridge, there is uranium under the ground there, and the U.S. government and corporations want that uranium. We believe that is the crux of the problem, where that they needed a way to get in. So they had set up paramilitary control on that Pine Ridge Reservation. There were tanks there, much like Vietnam maneuvers. Men were there, helicopters, phantom jets, all of that whole scene was going on there. The elders there were very fearful because they had no control and it had gone amok. So they had called the AIM members and asked them if they would come provide some security for the old people and the children. They had gone there, and the FBI particularly had become greatly threatened by this. So they had set up the paramilitary control. It was a part of a bigger action that the U.S. government did at that time called the COINTELPRO project. It invaded also the Black Panthers. And has since they found that we have documents now that tell us how it did invade other groups. We have proof that they also invaded the American Indian movement.
Well, there were a couple of things. I should have mentioned in the introduction that this happened in Pine Ridge, South Dakota,
yes.
And that this was called an invasion of some 100 FBI agents in SWAT uniform, and the Indians were in self-defense, and there was an Indian man also killed, and there's never been an investigation into that. A couple other things just to set the scene. There were 2 other American Indians arrested. They were tried separately in Iowa, of all places, and they were acquitted on the grounds of self-defense, that the jury said even had they fired the shots, it was clearly an act of self-defense. They were defending themselves. And the Iowa, mostly farmers on the jury, said they didn't believe much of the government's case anyway. Mr. Peltier had fled to Canada. He was brought back from Canada and stood trial separately in North Dakota, I believe, and he was convicted of murder and is serving 2 consecutive life sentences. So in a nutshell, that is what has happened. Is there anything you want to add now to that? That kind of sets the scene there.
Yes, we need to say that it has gone through the whole legal system. In '87, it was taken to the Supreme Court. It had been through appeals, many motions for appeal, for change of venue, for the judge to recuse himself. Much has gone into this case. William Webster was a judge on Leonard's case. In 1977 and 78, he became the FBI director.
He was a judge in the appeal process,
Yes.
correct? And,
Yes.
And 1 month later, he became the FBI director.
Yes. We still have some problem with that, because not that he didn't rightfully leave, but the other judges who were on that board with him stayed. And whatever influence he may have had on them remained. But that's another kind of legal problem we have. It's been through the Supreme Court. It does look as if the legal avenues are exhausted. Now we must try through public outcry and through appealing to our government to change things.
They have received, our government, some 20 million letters, is that correct, from all over the world, asking for a new and impartial trial?
They've received over 21 million from Russia alone. There are far in excess of that, counting from the other countries and from the United States. A problem here is people seem to have a problem believing that our government or our justice system is not true and honest and right. That's a difficult thing to believe. I think many times, when our children have to see the truth about their parents, it's a difficult thing to believe, and I think it's the same kind of theory. We don't want to believe our churches and our institutions, our government and our judicial system errors, but it does. And it has certainly erred with Leonard Peltier.
Well, you're a Cherokee, right? From
Yes.
Cherokee, North Carolina, right? I was there when we were taping our documentary Eagle Gun, Wendy Watson and I. One thing that comes to mind, you're talking, I think that's a very good point about our government and finding it hard to believe. And you really have to suspend belief, in a sense, of some of the principles of our country in order to open your eyes and perhaps believe some of these things in terms of rigging evidence and so forth. But one thing that comes to mind that makes this different is the history, which you alluded to, of the United States of America and the American Indian. It's terrible, it's pitiful, and it's disgusting, and it goes back 200 years. There was a treaty signed by our government, 1868, signing away the Black Hills and a lot of other land to the Lakota, the Sioux Indian. That has never been honored. Wounded Knee Massacre, 1890, where American soldiers massacred some 200 Sioux Indians. The soldiers who participated in that, and they gunned down men, women, and children, were awarded medals by our Congress in 1890. That brings us up to Wounded Knee 1973 that you mentioned. For some reason, our country seems very threatened by your people, and this has gone back for a long, long time. With that history, personally, I find it easier to believe some of these things, especially when we involve the Indian.
Once you come to a belief about the reality, it forces you to make a new stand within your own self about what you do believe and what you believe in, what kind of future you personally want.
Mm-hmm.
You then become active and you then begin wanting to learn more. Or I think so many of us decide to stay ignorant and inactive and not help those among us who are oppressed. And when there is any of us in pain or suppressed and oppressed, I think that's what sin is when we don't act and help each other. There are problems, social problems in all of our areas. And for us to profess something and not act and help each other, I think that's what has caused our big national social problems. The Native American certainly does have a black page in history. When you look at the Constitution and how it was formed and how we have the guarantee clause of due process for every American, it doesn't follow through. For many of us, and for most Native Americans, it doesn't follow through. It's interesting to get into that study. I'm taking constitutional law this semester, and even the Constitution was not signed willingly. So many of those men were coerced to sign in. To sign in the Constitution. There were only 13 states at that time. And the framers of that Constitution, I'm sure, had no idea that it would come to this. And what they wrote then would have to be applied in a nuclear computer age with this technology. Their creating that document was true for that time and age. But to imagine that we could come to having treaties and agreements and state rights was too much to expect that Constitution, especially when we know, Virginia people wouldn't sign it unless the New York people would sign it. And they both had to be paid off to sign it. It's quite a story when you know the real story of the Constitution. At that time, blacks were enslaved, the blacks in this country. The Native Americans did not become citizens until 1924.
Right.
We were granted citizenship at that time. When we think what it could have been to create that Constitution, we could have started on a good footing in this country. It could have been the black people brought and contributed this, and the Native Americans brought and contributed something, and the people from Europe contributed their part. It wasn't like that at all. This government isn't founded on love and peace and a common unifying ground. But there was so many distasteful, un-American type things at that time that created the Constitution.
So it goes way back. You mentioned technology. Technology seems to just bring the opposite effect of what it's probably intended to do, and that is, instead of opening our eyes, it kind of dulls our minds. I mean, it just appeals to the lowest common denominator, that people are just, we're in an entertainment age, that people have to be entertained constantly. They don't want to think about anything. We have a city of 200,000. There's probably all of 20 people in this room tonight,
Yes. Yes. I was earlier, before we got here, we were discussing this very subject. This semester and last semester, I'm working in a law firm who serves people who are whistleblowers. They sue corporations and the U.S. government for wrongdoing. And to see those files and to hear these people who are in real pain from the wrongdoing is heartbreaking. And they're our neighbors. We have some very interesting lawsuits from Indiana. And, to see that we're a hurting nation. We have brought ourselves through technology to be in, to have some serious problems. Terry, I saw Jill Long this morning.
Oh, you did?
I just now thought about it, yes.
Okay.
She said, "Tell everyone hello." And I had taken the tape of Leonard, the West 57th tape, and left it with her staff a couple of weeks ago. And they had seen it, and she's ready to write a letter in support of Leonard. We need to tell him when he calls.
Okay. I had invited their staff here tonight, and they said they were all busy.
She's ready to write a letter of support.
Okay.
And that's a big step.
Did you saw her in Washington? I was thinking
Yes.
Fort Wayne. It couldn't have been Fort Wayne. You didn't get here till a half hour ago.
No.
Okay,
in
great.
Washington, yes. I've been working with the man on her staff. His name's Bart Chilton.
Mm-hmm.
So, and they've been real interested. After they saw the tape, she said that she was real frustrated to see this and know this information, and she would be willing to help him in whatever way she could.
Okay. Well, speaking of Leonard, tell us a little bit about Leonard, and we'll hope to hear from him any minute now. But how did you become involved? I know that you've been a teacher, an educator. You've done a lot of different work with the Indian people and reservations. How did you become involved with Leonard?
I think most Native Americans knew about the incident from the outset. I knew quite a few of the AIM members. I didn't know Leonard Peltier. I met him in April, and he asked me if I would do some work on the case, and I agreed. I worked in the defense office this summer, and it's a difficult case because the legal avenues do seem to be exhausted. And now we must appeal to a much higher, different segment. We're working with Senator Inouye's office. We must also work with the Canadian government. They extradited him on fraudulent evidence. It fringes on a worldwide concern because there's international treaties and extradition laws. Well, the United States admit today that they violated every one of those. Not only did they enter fabricated evidence, but they intended, with intent, they fabricated it. It didn't just happen. Do you understand what I mean?
No, not our government wouldn't do that, surely.
Yes, I'm afraid they did. They went to Pine Ridge, and they found this woman. Her name is Myrtle Poorbear, and she has a lifelong history of psychiatric problems and care, and she has a history of alcoholism. They took her to a motel and kept her for approximately 2 weeks, and they forced her to make some statements and forced her to sign her name to those statements. That's the very information that they entered in Canada, and that's the information the Canadians used
Right.
to send him back here.
And their government is still upset about that, is that correct?
Yes.
The Canadian government?
Yes, yes. I met with Canadian government people 2 weeks ago. No, last week, 1 week ago. And they seem more outraged and upset than we seem in this country about that problem. We hope to work with this. We hope to work with it.
Well, she signed 3 different, all conflicting affidavits, correct?
Yes.
Saying that she was an eyewitness to this murder, and then she later said she was coerced into saying that, and that she had never met Leonard Peltier in her entire life.
It's true. It's true. Most of the other witnesses who testified at that trial have since recanted. This summer, I went to Arizona and took 2 affidavits from 2 men who were coerced. They talked and told me of being tied to the chair. At the time, they were like 15, 16, 17 years old. And one of them was in the room with the 2 FBI agents, and his mother. They brought his mother in because he was underage. And they told her, you know, you're not going to see him walk the earth anymore if he doesn't sign this, if he doesn't say what we want him to say. He wrote that, and he recanted. He said that he was afraid. It was out of fear, and it was mainly out of feelings because his mother was so upset sitting right next to him that he felt like he had to do this to save her feelings. The other man who gave his testimony in an affidavit is in another kind of hell, and he said this. He's an alcoholic, and he said that he cannot stand to be sober, that he can't stand to face the reality of this world, and that it has brought a different kind of hell to him, worse than being imprisoned, as Leonard is. That he knew he did wrong when he said what they told him to say. But I think he was 17 at the time. He said he had waited all these years for someone to approach him and talk with him about recanting. It was quite a moving meeting that I had with him. At 2 points in our conversation, we just cried because he was telling me of what his life has been since then and what Leonard had meant to him. Both of them testified that Leonard had been the compassionate person in those days, that Leonard had taught them how to pray. They were very spiritual. They based their whole movement on a worship, on a sweat and a pipe ceremony. And they both talked of how Leonard had taught them compassion. Of everything else, he taught them compassion and to care for each other, to take care for the young people of our tribes as well as of our nation, that this is where the hope has to come from.
Leonard has been compared to the great Chief Crazy Horse, and of course is the subject of the wonderful book by Peter Mathiasen, In the Spirit of Crazy Horse, which I believe one of the Indian men that Mr. Mathiasen was corresponding with signed his letter that way, and therefore Mr. Mathiasen took that title, In the Spirit of Crazy Horse. What does that mean to you, In the Spirit of Crazy Horse, as an Indian woman?
Leonard's a warrior. To me, it means that Leonard has characteristics and a belief system of a truly mature man, also of a mature person, not necessarily Native American,
Right.
where he has such a tremendous honor and respect for the earth. He's spoken out, and he's very concerned about the environment and our problems with our environment. He has also spoken out about our children and the reality and the extreme sadness that our children must live in. I'm not sure that we need to talk about those tremendous problems that our young people have: drugs and alcohol, abuse, and all of the neglect. When you have a population of misunderstood and confused adults and young people, your children have to suffer that. And your children are the people that it visits the worst, because they don't get the love and the care and the teaching of attentive, good parenting because of the confusion. Leonard turned 45 in September. His father passed away the 31st of March. And with this age, as well as with the death of his father, and the problems that his children have, his children are young adults now, he became quite a bothered person about his life. I think that's probably something that happens to all of us at that age, is a midlife kind of looking back at where we've been and not so happy about some things. Leonard has been going through that too, especially with his children and his father, and not being there. He was not able to go to the father's funeral or see him in his illness in his last days.
He was not?
No. The prison system wouldn't allow him to go. They said that it was for national security reasons that they wouldn't allow him.
I might point out as a reference that Daniel Stonebreaker, one of 4 young men who walked into the home of Betty Jane Spencer and shot her and her 4 sons as they lay on the floor in the head with a shotgun, was allowed out of prison here in Indiana to preach the sermon at his grandfather's burial. Anyway, I did a documentary on that, The Shadow of the Dream, and so I just happened to know that, and would seem like he would be more of a national security risk than Leonard. But anyway, well, as you know, I was not allowed to go interview Leonard. We've tried to go to Leavenworth to interview Leonard, and were turned down by the warden and then an appeal process on the grounds that they have a rule that you have to represent an FCC licensed station, which Channel 10 and cable television is not. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, what you are watching here tonight is not real television. It's because it's not an FCC licensed station. They said this is for security reasons. I have been allowed into and have received a certificate from the Indian inmates, the Terre Haute Federal Penitentiary, for a weekend. They did allow me to leave, fortunately, and I've just been invited back this weekend. It would seem if I'm a security risk, I would be a security risk in Terre Haute as well as Leavenworth. They're both federal penitentiaries. So anyway, there's a little point of reference in comparison.
The group in New York who also hope to get in to film Leonard are doing a documentary right now about the FBI and their involvement. They have been allowed into the big prisons in the nation, but they won't allow them in to see Leonard. It's sometimes it's selective enforcement, and sometimes when Leonard Peltier gets a publicity or there's some action around his case, he ends up in solitary. He ends up with having a lot of harassment, a lot of rejection. This has happened to him all through the years, numerous times. One day, his lawyers will be able to go in and work with him and see him, and the very next day, the lawyers are restrained and can't go in. It's quite interesting how that it becomes selective. Leonard is harassed on a continuing basis. It is an arrest home where he is. He has continuing problems in there. Still, he's never had a negative incident report. He's never had bad reports. He's quite a happy person. Mm-hmm. Have you seen that from talking with him?
Yes, I have. I was amazed, really, at the lack of bitterness or anger in him. I detected none whatsoever. There's a very gentle quality and a very determined quality, but yet a sense of resignation. I sense that if this is what fate has dealt him to help his people, he will do it, but he would like to be out of prison, obviously. Mm-hmm.
Yes, and he said that to me too, that if it's going to help bring attention and bring some good work to Native Americans, that he should stay in there and that good can come of it. That as awful as it is, that he would be willing to do that for that bigger cause.
How long has he been in prison now?
Today he's been in prison 5,019 days today. It'll be 14 years in February that he's been in prison. At one point, there was a real attempt on his life. Mm-hmm. It's one of the most moving things I know about him, how that all has come out and how he can talk about it, and he still is not so filled with total bitterness. A man named Robert Wilson, people call him Standing Deer, was approached by 2 government officials to kill Leonard. And he said, if you will get me medical treatment and if you will dismiss some of these charges against me, I will do that. And he agreed to do that. The charges were dismissed. and he got medical treatment. And after he had gotten to know Leonard, he then saw that Leonard was such a wonderful person, and he told him what had happened.
Hello? Yes, who is this? Yes, but we're waiting for his call. Yes, but, well, right, well, we're okay. Is he there? Yeah, we've had the line open the whole time, sir. No, nobody's been on it. The line, what was wrong? What was wrong with our phone? He's tried for 30 minutes to call here.
Nobody in the control room seems to know right now.
There's no, this is not a public line. This is a studio line. I can't imagine who would have been on the telephone.
Are you talking with his office?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
You said no one answered. But we've been here since we're on the air on live television right now, and we've been here since 7 o'clock on the air. Here, Yvonne Bushyhead's going to talk with you.
Linda? Thomas, is Leonard on the line with you? Another guy had to call you? Do you imagine Leonard might call you back again? Okay. Well, the line has been open, so he should have been able to get through, I understand. Thomas, did you try also? Thomas tried also. Is there another number?
Just this number that he called at 6 o'clock, all right.
Leonard had called earlier this evening, Thomas, this number. Yes. Okay. If he calls back, have him to keep trying, please. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Somehow, Terry, somehow the phone became unplugged in the control room.
Oh, Jesus. I give up.
Don't give up. Let me finish telling you about Standing Deer. So Leonard started teaching him Indian ways, and Standing Deer became very moved and impressed with this man, and told him of his approach and that he had been contracted to kill Leonard. So Leonard said they had.
Got the call. I'm sorry, we got the call now.
What?
They have the call now.
We've got the call now.
Hello?
Hello.
Is this Leonard?
Yes, sir. This is me.
Yes, thank you. Well, we're very sorry for any trouble you had. We realize it's very difficult for you to call, and I guess there was some kind of problem in the control room. But we're still on the air, and this is wonderful to hear from you. So, Yvonne is here. Say hi.
Hello, Leonard. I'm real good. How are you? Are you ready for questions?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I was ready.
Okay.
Leonard, you're talking to a studio audience and live television audience in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And in starting our conversation, is there anything you would like to say?
No, let's let you guys Ask the questions. Fire away.
Okay, if anyone in the audience has a question for Leonard, raise your hand and I'll relay it to him. We're going to start, Leonard, with how you're feeling. How's your health?
Well, as far as I'm aware, seems to be all right. I feel healthy. Occasionally, quite frequently, I keep getting pains in both left and right side. I think it might be gallstones, though I'm not sure. Of course, I'm not no physician, so I really don't want to give myself a diagnosis of what the problem is.
Okay. Well, Yvonne was just talking about standing bear. Do you want to finish? Standing deer, I'm sorry. And we have a question from the audience as well, so yeah, you can talk.
Hello.
Hello.
My name is Marla Robshin, and I have been intrigued with the international focus on your case. I would like to know what is the possibility of a retrial for you, since there is a whole lot of evidence brought forth that would exonerate you without any problem in the event of a retrial.
Well, if I was to win a retrial, I'm almost positive I would not even be re-indicted. But the problem is to get the courts to give me a fair and just ruling. I mean, there's numerous constitutional violations involved in this case, yet for some reason the courts doesn't want to deal with them properly. I think Yvonne probably has mentioned most of this. I mean, they had convicted me on what was the circumstantial evidence, first of all, but what was considered the most critical evidence against me. And during the trial, we didn't have any way to dispute it, because I didn't know if this was the murder weapon or not. I mean, they just had no idea. But years later, we find out it was a manufactured weapon. And still, the Eighth Circuit Court of Appeals, all they ruled was that there was some critical evidence concerning this specific piece of evidence I just spoke about that was what we legally would held for me, that could have exonerated me. But that's as far as they went on that issue. And with this conservative courts in there right now, the chances are of the courts dealing with it properly are really very, very slim. But we're still trying. I mean, we're not going to give up. And Yvonne, I don't know if she has mentioned it, but has started a law clinic at the law school she goes to. So we're going to research and hopefully find another angle to approach these legal issues and constitutional issues.
When I asked about your health, Leonard, I meant, of course, your physical health and your mental health. How is your spirit holding up under, Yvonne just said, be 14 years in February.
February 6th, yes.
February 6th. How are you holding up mentally with all of this legal maneuvering and...
Well, my spirits, are still very high. And the reasons of this is that from the very beginning of my arrest, my immediate family plus Indian supporters have been there to support me from the very, very beginning. I mean, as soon as I was arrested, I was allowed to make a phone call, and people traveled hundreds of miles just to be there, try to get in to see me at the same time, set lawyers up. But since then, it has grown enormously. But mainly in more in Europe, Eastern and Western Bloc countries, and of course this really helps. It really, really helps to be able to keep your spirits up. I mean, without that, I'd be just like many prisoners that I meet every day that really don't have any hope. Now the sentences are getting longer. They have to do more time, and it's a hopeless situation for many of them here. And the only thing I got going again is all the support, and it helps my spirits enormously.
we want to remind everybody that, which I didn't say, so I'll say it for the first time, that Leonard has become quite an artist in prison. And one of the ways, in fact, that his defense committee that Yvonne works with supports itself, the main way, in fact, is through the sale of his artwork. And I think that we have some, I know we have some of his paintings that we can show you on the screen while we talk. So I just wanted to tell them that, Leonard. Leonard, could you tell our audience just what happened, why you're innocent, where you were that day, and tell them in your own words?
Well, it really began before that June 26th. Right after Wounded Knee occupation, which, by the way, was organized and requested by the traditionalists and traditionalist chiefs on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. Those are the people that had called in the American Indian movement and requested their help because they couldn't receive any justice from the United States government. And after Wounded Knee, there was a lot of Indian people that were we call traditionalists and American Indian movement supporters that were killed on the reservation. And after many attempts to contact the FBI, the U.S. Marshals, and every law agencies they could, politicians, requesting that there be some type of investigation and at least arrest somebody for some of these murders that was taking place. The General Accounting Service, a branch of the United States government, finally did an investigation after June 26th, of course, and their figures, they said they ran out of funds that was appropriated to this investigation, but they only investigated 60 murders, but we know there was at least 260, there's 70, something like that. Anyway, finally on June 1st, the traditional chiefs wrote a letter to the State Department and stated in there that because they could not get no response from the United States government and any of their police forces to investigate some of these murders that they had eyewitnesses to. They said that they would no longer recognize the Bureau of Indian Affairs tribal government and would therefore start organizing to remove the tribal Bureau of Indian Affairs, BIA, tribal system off the reservation and go back to a traditionalist Lakota, which is Sioux, government. And after that, they noticed that the people around the reservations noticed there was a large mobilization of armored personnel carriers on different points around and near the reservations. There was people, of course, non-Indian people, running around the reservations in military fatigues. And we have documentation from Bureau of Indian Affairs, BIA police officers that stated that they knew something was up, but they weren't being told, naturally, because they were Indians, that something was going to happen, because the attitude of the FBI and other non-Indian law enforcement agencies on the reservation was terrible, and they didn't know. Of course, they didn't know what happened. These are all from this information is all from reports that BIA officers had made, and everybody was suspecting or expecting something was going to happen, and something did. And on June 26th, there was a firefight on the Jumping Bull Ranch. 2 police officers, 2 FBI agents, and an Indian man, Joseph Stunts, was killed. 4 of us was charged. 2 were found not guilty by a jury of non-Indians for reasons of self-defense. Jimmy Eagle's charges were dropped. And we found, of course, again, later on, documents from that stated put the full weight of the American government on Leonard Peltier and receive a conviction. And what they meant by that was throw the law books out the window, because they were going to get a conviction no matter what they did. I was not allowed, by the way, to put up a defense whatsoever. I mean, I was not allowed to properly cross-examine the witnesses against me. But when it came to putting up my defense, every witness that I called for me was ruled irrelevant. So therefore, I wasn't allowed to testify in my behalf. And the only witness I was allowed to call was a character witness. And of course, the end results was a conviction. We also had on the jury admitted racists, which we all got. This is all documented. This is all documented. We had a hearing on it. She made derogatory racial statements against Indians before she even knew she was going to be selected to be on this jury. And you know, the rest is 14 years of life in prison, and attempting to get out, trying to fight to get out of here.
Thank you. We were just talking. Ivan, you want to take him up to the point that you were talking?
We're still on the air?
Yeah, we're still here. Excuse me. Excuse me. Here, I forgot to hold the phone up.
Leonard, maybe we should talk about the law clinic and the Mod House art show and the demonstration.
I really didn't hear what you said. I heard Mod House and something. Mod House. I didn't hear the question.
Maybe we should talk about the Mod House and the law clinic.
Right, and also the prints that are being produced right now.
Okay, do you want to talk about it?
Well, all I can really say is to encourage people to attend it. We're organizing an art show in Sale for in March.
Yeah.
Which I will submit probably 10 or 15 paintings for, but I also have some internationally known Indian artists that are going to donate paintings to this. So they're very successful artists, and you know, I hope it's successful. I mean, some of my past fundraising benefits in the past have been sabotaged. I had Willie Nelson, Chris Christopherson, Robbie Williams, Jackson Brown, number of top name entertainers organize a fundraiser for me in Los Angeles. I think it was 2 years ago now. And people, the FBI immediately started to oppose it, started to write letters opposing it in newspapers. There was bomb threats against Anthem Theater that was holding that had the concert, and of course the police force was opposing it, and they were claiming that they would have to hire more security because people were coming there to start riots. The end results was we were lucky, very, very lucky that we didn't go into red. We broke out about even. But this is something, and then of course Kansas City this year, the same thing happened. But any type of fundraisers that are done on my behalf seem to get sabotaged. But we're hoping that this doesn't happen at the Mott House when we have this art show, and I would encourage a lot of people to come there, because we hopefully will have some prints there too for people that can't afford the paintings, which is print collecting is a pretty big thing now too.
I haven't told him about the law clinic and the work that we're doing at the law school in your case.
Well, the purpose of the law clinic is to hope to research the transcripts, and hopefully we can find another legal issue to reopen the case with, or some other legal angles to approach the old issues that we spoke on. That's what I believe that law clinics were.
And I didn't tell them about the demonstration in Washington, D.C. on December 9th.
Yeah. You want to tell them about it? Stephen
Van Zandt will be there.
Yeah.
And we've invited quite a list of other people. There will be statements. We sent out requests for solidarity statements. And we need one from you, by the way.
Sure.
But we've invited quite a few people to Washington, D.C. on December the 9th. It'll be at 2:30 in the afternoon.
All right. Any more questions? Anybody want to ask? Or?
Yes, a gentleman is coming up to ask you a question.
All right.
Yeah, this is Dancing Feather, Leonard.
Pardon?
Oh, go ahead, you can tell.
Leonard?
Yes.
This is Tom Dancing Feather, Bonjour, Niji. I just wanted to let you know that there's many, many people that love you, and we are in your corner.
Oh.
We will sweat for you.
Oh.
We will offer the pipe. We will play the drum, sing, and we will dance for you. And we shall keep it up until you are free, my brother.
Thank you. Thank you, brother. This is something I'd like to also mention to the audience here, is that Indian people have been doing this for me since the beginning of my arrest. There's Indian people of all religious denominations that have been praying for me, from Mormons, Catholics, every denomination. The Catholics, Indians have been lighting candles on my behalf, and the other religious denominations, whatever they do, but they've been having, I got rabbis, I got all kinds of, I don't know if there's any Jewish Indians, rabbis, that belong to the Jewish religion, I'm not sure, but I know Indian people, and of course a lot of non-Indian people have been praying and since the beginning, and that there is another thing that really helps keep my spirits high. And I would like I've told them many, many times, I really thank them for that. It's to us Indians to have people pray for you that way. It's really a deep feeling you get inside of you to know that your people really love you that much, to Sundance for you and suffer while they Sundance in the Sundance and the Sweat Lodge. It's really an honor, and it's something that we really hold close to ourselves, really hold dear to our hearts when we have people praying for us like that.
Thank you, Leonard. Yvonne has something.
Leonard, I didn't tell them about the debate that we're going to have at the law school.
Yes.
We have set January the 25th as the date.
Yeah.
So it will flow more with what you need for the parole.
Yeah.
We've gotten in touch with everyone, and it will be on the 25th at 7 o'clock in the evening. We've attracted some pretty good television coverage. Mm-hmm. So it looks like it's going to be real good.
Yeah.
Do you want to say anything about that?
Well, I'm hoping that the government responses and sends somebody to represent them. I don't know if they will, because the last hearing that we had in the Canadian Supreme Court, they conceded that there was fraud committed in the Canadian courts to have me extradited. I don't know if you mentioned the Myrtle Poor Bear incident, which is they had this woman testify that she was my girlfriend and an eyewitness, and I'd never met or seen this woman in my life. And but just through last July, the State Department conceded that they committed fraud. In other words, this Myrtle Poor Bear was a manufactured witness and was nowhere near Jumping Bull Ranch or I don't even think she was, yeah, I guess she was on the reservation that day. But
Anyway, the debate on the 25th of January, we intend to have 2 people from the Justice Department to present the government's case, and 2 of Leonard's lawyers, Bruce Ellison and William Kunstler, to present Leonard's case. And then we intend to have 2 mutual objective people to talk about the United States and Indian treaties and laws and the historical aspect. That will be the format for that program. We believe it'll be real powerful. We believe that we need to tape it and to have it.
well, naturally, I'm hoping it's a success. You know.
Do you want the phone?
Leonard, we're almost out of time for our live show. Would you like to stay on the line? We can continue talking with you. I'm going to have to wrap up for our live television audience there.
Sure.
Would you like to stay on the line? I'd like you to make a closing comment. We have about a minute. If there's anything you'd like to say to our live audience here.
Well, I welcome you and thank you for coming here to attending this. But I would like to tell you is that, this case is no longer just an Indian case. I'm speaking to those who are non-Indians. There's been a serious breach of the Constitution, the United States Constitution, to convict me. And so this concerns you too, because you got to remember that a lot of our fathers and grandfathers had fought in foreign wars. Some of them gave their lives. Some of them were crippled. Excuse my language here. I'm in termination there. And they went over and suffered and gave their lives and bodies for this Constitution. And when you have a certain portion of our part of this government that can violate so severely this Constitution, that's disrespecting you too. That's like telling you that your families.
Thank you, Leonard. We're going to wrap up now, but stay on the line. Stay on the line. We can keep going as soon as we finish here. Well, I want to thank you, Leonard Peltier from Leavenworth Prison in Kansas, and in person all the way from Washington, D.C., Yvonne Bushyhead. And I want to thank our audience and our viewing audience. And this affects all of us. Thank you all.
The officials that are making the laws that are imposing these harsh conditions on people. It's the average citizen, because that's what these people believe and commit crimes against.
So conditions certainly aren't getting any better under the new administration.
No, I mean, of course, where I'm at here in Leavenworth is I would say even 100% better than Marion. But in fact, what's happened now is we just, they change wardens every 2 years, and we just got a new warden in here now that's come directly from Marion. So we don't know if he's going to come here with that Marion attitude or what. So, we're all wondering what's going to happen now. We don't know,
You might want to mention to the people that Marion was the prison where you were before. Is that correct?
Yes.
Before that.
Yes, I was in Marion, Illinois, which is the equivalent to Alcatraz, which was one of the history around that. I don't know if people are aware. It was one of the harshest prisons the federal system had. Marion is the same thing. It took its place. The institution isn't that old. I think it's maybe 30 years old now. So it's fairly clean and fairly modern. But, it's It's the treatment. It's a treatment that's horrible. I mean, you leave there and you're bitter. You're very bitter. You want to get back to, you want to get even. You want to get, you're very vindictive. And, as we all know, every country is, they're judged by how they treat their people in prison. So we can see kinder, gentler America from Marion. And, they're saying a lot of people are there that are there are there because they're in control, can't control them in other prisons. That's not true. That's simply not true. I was there, I know. I mean, this guy just sent a guy over here just last week. This guy is a very, very nice person. He just happened to be revolutionary. And he's sent to Marion for him. He's over here right now for the night. But I don't know what to say, except that the people have to make the prison conditions an issue nowadays.
Thank you.
Before it does get too bad. Because, by the turn of the century, we're going to have, I think something like, in the federal system alone, 250,000 in prison, 250,000 people in prison. That's just the federal system. I believe that's what they're predicting statistics to be. Plus in the state joints, you're going to have a lot of people angry when they finally do come out.
Thanks, Senator. We have a question from one of our audience. Sandy?
This is for Yvonne Orland. I'm still trying to understand what would be the specific mechanism that would allow Leonard's release. Would it be a retrial, or could it be a pardon? I'm trying to understand what the avenues are.
Her question was just, what is the avenue that might get you released? Would it be a new trial? Would it be a presidential pardon? Even public demand or pressure? Do you have any idea on that, Leonard?
Yeah. Well, since it's obvious that I'm not going to get any relief through the courts, and a good example of what I'm going to say right now is to look at what South Africa. They've just released prisoners there from because of international pressure, prisoners that they said they would never release because they belong to the African National Congress, etc. I don't know if the people, if you're aware of what the history is around there, what the ANC does. But from international pressure, they finally released a lot of these people. Now, of course, yes, some of them have done 25, 26 years. And, but if you really look back a few years, there's the international pressure just started 4 or 5 years ago. So this is what we have to do here. In this case, we have to, you have to become very committed. You have to study and memorize the legal issues. You have to get out and start speaking to your neighbors. You have to, we have to build an army of people out there to put that political pressure that it's going to take to get me out of here. Because it's one thing is that we all got to remember this country is run by the people, not by politicians or any law enforcement agencies, and it's run by the people. Now, I want people to understand, too, is that I'm not an anti-police force. I'm not anti-law enforcement, law and order. I don't believe in anarchists. And we need a police force because there is some very sick, evil people running around the streets. And but we also need a police force that's going to abide by the laws and the oaths of office that they take. We don't need people that are going to become so powerful, like say the FBI or CIA or any other law enforcement agencies that can manufacture evidence and totally violate the Constitution of the United States to receive a conviction. That's including prosecutors and judges is what I'm speaking about. That's when you really have a lawless society, when you have these type of people that take over your courtrooms, your law, your Constitution. But that's what has to be done. It has to be, people have to really be committed about it. And like I tell everybody else, we have supporting evidence for anything, any allegations, accusations, or whatever you want to call it, that we make. We have supporting documents for it. And it's their documentation. It isn't something we created. It's theirs.
Okay. Did you have another part of your question, Sandy?
I guess I'm still trying to understand what the focus is. Is it for, I'm naive legally, is it for a pardon? Is it for a retrial? What's the mechanism? I'm trying to understand that. What should we request / demand as we voice our feelings?
Let me tell. Yeah. She just asked again, what is the focus? I think Yvonne's going to answer for a second, Leonard.
What?
She asked again, what should we help you work toward? Should it be a new trial? Should it be public demand?
Well, that's kind of a difficult question for me to answer because, again, I go back to, I'm not sure that, I don't believe I'm going to get relief in the courts. So, this was what we were asking for, is for a new trial. And I guess basically we are still asking for that. I mean, even if I was to be released by clemency, I still would abandon my right to prove my innocence. So I guess this is something that we can continue to ask for as a new trial. But I don't know who we would write to. That's the problem. I don't know who the people who they would write to for a new trial.
So you're going to try both. You're going to continue.
We're going to continue trying all of it.
Right. All
options.
Okay, thank you. One of the things that occurred to me as we've been talking, and we mentioned it earlier before you called in, was Peter Mathiasen's book, In the Spirit of Crazy Horse. Could you tell us a little bit about why that book was banned, and then if there's plans for a rewrite or a new edition?
Well, the book was, we had the governor of South Dakota, William Jankel, file a $20 million lawsuit against it. Also an FBI agent named David Price, who also filed a $20 million lawsuit. It's went through all the courts, and we won, because all of the judges have, in fact, one of the judges that reviewed the case was an appointee of William Jankel's. And I guess he suspected or hoped that since he appointed him, he would rule in his favor, and we would have to go to court. But we won all of the lawsuits. All of the judges that have reviewed this case have wrote very lengthy opinions, all in favor of us, and they're not friends of ours. So, they didn't do it because they liked us. They just did it because the law was there. Plus, Viking Press is a very big organization, very powerful, old money and very powerful. So, I mean, they're not going to violate the law so directly against somebody that big. We are in the process right now of more or less what we're calling cleaning up the book. There's a lot of things in there that doesn't really need to be in there. Some of the history, and some of the things that we're considering just gossip. And we're going to take some of that stuff out, shorten the book, and possibly add a new chapter, which I think will, since the book was written, a lot of new evidence had surfaced, and etc. And we hope to be out in spring with a paperback.
Well, wonderful. We'll look forward to that, definitely. Yvonne, did you want to ask something?
By the way, that book rose to the number 6 bestseller list. I think the book was only out 2-3 weeks, maybe a month before it rose to number 6 bestseller list. And we would have sold millions upon millions of copies by now, because it was in demand all over the world. People wanted to read it. And Peter Peter Matheson is very credible, very credible, and very good author.
Yeah, I should tell our audience we do have a copy of that here in our library. We have a good library, and they have a copy of it. That's where I got it and read it. Yvonne, did you want to tell him about Jill?
Yes. It's still available in a lot of the libraries.
Leonard, this is me.
Yes.
This morning, I went to Jill Long's office.
Pardon?
Jill Long, remember I told you about Congresswoman Jill Long?
Yes, yes.
And she saw the tape, her staff saw the tape, and she was very frustrated from seeing the judicial system. She's going to write, she said tell you hello.
All right.
And she said tell all these people hello. And she's going to write a support letter. She wants to know what else she might do.
Well, this is some of the things the audience can do too. I think we should first concentrate on writing the parole commissioner, and people will have to write into the defense committee to be added to the mailing list, so that we can, send them information and what has to be done next. But here's our strategy. Our strategy for at the moment is to continue with the parole plan. But I have received my pre-sentence investigation report, which there's a lot of inaccuracies in there, and we're hoping that we can get back into court to maybe get a resentence out of it. But the dangers of this is that the judge that was at the trial, Benson, who the FBI went shopping for to preside over my trial, is still taking cases as senior judge, even though he's retired. We're hoping that we're going to attempt to try to get him recused, that's excused from the case, and hopefully be granted a hearing to get these corrections made in pre-sentence PSI. We're going to need letters written to the parole commission, and once that's completed, if this all fails, denied parole, or what could happen if I don't get the hearing is that what they'll do, and don't get my sentence changed to say even run the life sentences running concurrently. Well, what the parole board will do is, if they grant me parole, what they'll do is parole me to my second life sentence. So then I'll have to do another 10, 12, 14 years. But once that's completed, then we're going to attempt to try to get Bush to grant me clemency. And as you all know, that's not all very hopeful. I mean, there's some other things going on, but I don't think Yvonne can. It's got to be kept confidential for now, at least for another 2 weeks. But that's also something else that I think will be very successful. But because of our commitment and our word to the people involved, politicians involved, we'll keep this confidential until we're told it's okay to go ahead and start the campaign. But this will be another letter-writing campaign to support certain politicians in this. And those are the avenues that we're going right now. Then possibly the last avenue we're going to go to is, and I think we're going to go ahead and try to do it anyway while we're doing all of this, is to attempt to get a hearing in the United Nations. Of course, even if I win in the United Nations, that doesn't release me. All they'll do is make an official complaint against the United States government.
Do you want to talk about the movie?
Well, I'm supposed to really be keeping this confidential too, because we're afraid that people might try to file lawsuits, and this will keep us all tied up in the courts for years. And but there is a movie going to be made, and a documentary by Robert Redford, documentary, and Oliver Stone will be making a movie.
Is Is there anybody else in our audience that would like to ask Leonard a question before we quit? Yeah, Marla.
Leonard had to have some eye surgery, and what I read was very difficult to get any medical assistance. So the Soviet Union sent a few of their physicians and did the surgery, and I'd like to know where he stands as far as his vision goes now.
Okay, the question, Leonard, was about your eye surgery. How are you? And
Well, I never had eye surgery. The Bureau of Prisons wouldn't allow it. And the end result is I've lost 80% in my left eye, but it's stabilized. It hasn't got any worse. Of course, it doesn't really matter if it got any worse because I can't really see that good out of it anyway. But it's deteriorated now so bad where they could not repair it, even if they were allowed. If I was allowed to get a retina specialist to operate on it, but I don't even know if an operation would do any good now. I had a retina specialist here in Kansas City that offered his services free of charge to come in and laser stitch the vessels that broke and clean out. There's a little microdot drainage in everyone's eyes that all the fluid drains out. And apparently what happens is that on something like this is that the blood is too thick to flow out of this drainage, and what it does is it gels up and it plugs up that little hole, or microdot drainage, whatever it's called. Medically, I don't know what it's called. But anyway, it's stabilized. My right eye seems, I don't have any problems with it. I use reading glasses if I read too long or paint too long. Or I'm just grateful that everybody's praying for my health, and hopefully that'll prevent me from having the same problem with my right eye. And if I do, well, I don't need to say what would happen. I mean, I don't even want to think of that.
thanks, Leonard. Anybody else? Okay, she wanted to know about the Soviet relationship with all of this, the Soviet physicians.
Well, during this time when I had this stroke, is what they're telling me I had, a mild stroke. And what happened is that there's Dr. King Lee, who was the retina specialist here in Kansas City, who had offered his services. And of course it was being denied. My supporters, the Defense Committee, start putting the word out what was happening. And because the Soviet Union has opened up their prisons and mental institutions, etc., for American doctors and human rights activists, organizations to go in there, and investigate what we've been told has been happening over there. They said, well, we want to go in and examine Leonard Peltier. And the ophthalmologist that came here is considered the best ophthalmologist in the world. This is the World Medical Journal. He was considered the best. That's how they got involved. That's how the Soviet doctors got involved in this. Of course, by the time they got here and examined me, by the way, the day before, which was almost a year later since the problem began, the day before the Soviet doctors were to come in and examine me is when they finally took me downtown and had a retina specialist, give me a thorough examination. That was the day before. But the Soviet doctors told me that it had deteriorated. They allowed it to deteriorate so long that it was blistering in there, and they gave me some medication that they use with this type of problem over there, which would stabilize, but it wouldn't get any worse. The two medications that they left, he said, there's one medication, he says, look, because it deteriorated. He said, well, it's one medication that we use in this problem. It normally works real good over in the Soviet Union and very successful. Over here, these doctors told me that they had one medication that was an equivalent to it, one of the medications. And they said the other medication, because they didn't know what it was, and they had sent it to laboratories, including CIA laboratories, to see what's in it. They didn't know what was in it. Well, I don't know if they think they're talking to somebody that's just jumped off the cabbage truck or something, but there's no way it would make me believe that our laboratories cannot analyze medication. That's simply not true. I mean, they have some of the best scientists in the world here that work in these laboratories, and the reason why they didn't give it to me, I really don't know. But that's what I was told. The reasons why they were not going to give it to me. So.
Okay, thanks, Leonard. You got anything else you want to say to Leonard? Okay. We're going to give you another phone number to reach Yvonne. Leonard, you got a pencil?
Hold on, let me take a piece of paper out of my pocket here.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, it's 219 422 3661.
3661. When are you going to be here?
That's for a good time. Call. No, just kidding. we don't want to get the lady in trouble there.
Yeah, I can go for that. After 14 years, I can go for that. When should I call?
Okay, that's Wendy's number, and Yvonne will be staying there.
Oh, okay. All right.
In about an hour, she'll be there.
Well, I don't know. I'm going to have to get off the phone here. I don't know. Probably won't be till tomorrow, Yvonne.
Okay. Well, that'll be all right.
But I've been on the phone too long here.
Right, yeah, we better wrap up. Well, Leonard, thank you. Round of applause for Leonard Peltier.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And one last thing.
Okay.
I would encourage the audience to please buy print of the Big Mountain Lady.
Okay.
Arlen Johnson, which Yvonne will give you the name and stuff.
Okay.
This print, the price is going to go up by January 1st. It's being sold right now for $125. But these are top quality prints. They're signed and numbered. And if anybody in the audience knows the value of these things, they increase. They don't decrease.
Okay.
And,
yeah.
By January 1st, they're going to be $250. So. This funds will also be used to, as Yvonne mentioned before, to help us develop these strategies, plans that we have going right now.
Okay, we put some literature out about that on our table.
Sure.
So, Leonard, thank you so much. It was a privilege.
Happened, our
I'm on the line. Yes, sir.